Welcome to Vision for Change Radio with John Stevenson. When faith meets information, everything is possible. It takes just one moment to put your life on the road to success and personal fulfillment. You can obtain God's best when you can see your future in your present. Listen in as we share information that will inspire your spirit and empower your soul.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be alive today. And I'm so happy that you all are here joining me, whether you're listening to me in your car, whether you're driving, whether you are sitting and you're scrolling. If you're scrolling, stop. Vision for Change time. That's corny, right? I know. Melanie, don't judge me, Melanie, because Anyway, I'm John Stevenson. For all y'all who are on these pages here, you know who I am. If you're streaming from all my friends' pages, I'm John Stevenson, and this is Vision for Change. And I've titled this podcast Conversation at the Wall because I got a wall behind me. I've called it, Vision for Change Radio. It's on the radio. It is Vision for Change. You can call it what you want, but I am here and I'm your host tonight. And I've been advertising this.
Korey, can you hear me? They froze. Did they freeze?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but John is frozen.
He's frozen.
Can we send him a message?
I will.
Okay.
Oh, Mobility Show. Somebody posted that. Well,
Yeah.
He might not be frozen everywhere.
Yeah, I'm texting him. Okay.
Well, are we still live? I guess we are.
Yeah.
So, Melanie, tell me a little bit about what you do.
I am a consultant.
Okay.
There are two parts to what I do.
Okay.
I consult with businesses. My clients have been small pharmaceutical companies who are launching and relaunching their patient support programs.
Nice.
So when they're and you may have heard of, when you hear a commercial about this company may be able to, you may be able to obtain your medication for free. The programs that the companies have, that's what I do. I assist them when they are launching or relaunching their program with a different hub provider.
Nice.
That's what I do on a more corporate level. And then on a more personal one-on-one level, I consult with or advise individuals, families on how to organize and gather and document their medical and financial information. Because what I was finding, based on my own story, is that people were running into situations where loved ones were getting sick or were passing away, and they had to take over their affairs and had no clue as to what to do, how to do it, where their important or vital information was. And throughout the course, I realized that people just were not having those discussions before we get to that point. And for various reasons. So I really made it a personal mission to I started with my family, to begin to educate folks on the importance of preparing and planning for the future. And it does not mean planning necessarily for death. It means for the future, because
Sure.
You can be chronically ill or injured and still need that same level of support or engagement from family members. And coming from our community, we know, historically, we're not as prepared. I also got frustrated with the level of crowdsourcing of funerals because people didn't have insurance. They didn't make preparations. They didn't know what they were doing. and just was like, we've got to do better. We have to do things to help ourselves and help each other. So that's my passion project.
I love
That's
that.
my personal mission.
I love that. I love that. And you know, and it's across. It is in our community, but it is across community lines that we just do not want to have the conversation around. And I love how you phrased it. The future. We see it as something as ending, but we do not want to discuss the inevitable future. So I love that. That's beautiful, Miss Young. How are you?
I am well.
Miss Young, tell me a little bit about yourself. Yeah, tell me what do you do, Miss
Well,
Young?
I am a end of life doula.
Wow.
Based on my experiences with family and friends as people have come to end of life, especially family members. Actually, I think most of my life I've been spent as an advocate. I really believe and always have believed that when, even if you go on to the doctor for curative care, you need an advocate that is with you, especially as you get into palliative and hospice care.
Yeah.
So after becoming an advocate for family and friends as they were coming to end of life, I decided to become a certified end of life doula so that I could understand and have the tools that are necessary to understand just what happens if somebody is coming to end of life. So as my mother came to end of her life and she passed at 93, I felt like I was better prepared to understand what all the different phases was that she was going through. And I walked the journey with a friend for 2 years as he came to end of life. And I think he perfectly prepared for his end of life and had everything in order. So becoming an end of life doula, after seeing that our people really don't prepare or have things in order, I decided to start a non-for-profit organization rooted in dignity. And as an offshoot to that, I conduct seminars on end of life planning, preparation, care for marginalized, underserved, overlooked, and buyout communities. So I've been doing a lot of seminars recently. I told you I did one in Philadelphia at the Salt and Light Church, which another one sometime in June or July.
I have never heard of an end of life doula. I want to say that, but I respect the space of doulas. I know several, and that is a niche that is needed everywhere. So thank you so much for your work and your commitment, because we continue to fall apart. I'm a pastor. But I also am a pastor. I've been a pastor for Jesus.
Forever.
Forever. I've been pastoring a long time. Over the last 5 years, we have opened up a group therapeutic practice because there are moments, you all know, around grief, death, and dying, around marriage, around all of the intersection of our relational lives that over the pulpit will never get solved, challenged, or even discipled. And so coming out of the pandemic, we wanted to offer something as a congregation that would introduce us to the community, but also give us some transformational opportunity, some long-term transformational opportunity. And this was the best space that I found, my gifts and some other gifts around me. And so we took some licensed therapy, licensed clinical social workers, and some licensed professional counselors, and a pastoral care professional, and we created a group practice that is serving individuals, families, couples, and children in the Delaware County area. And of course, we marry and bury in my profession. And so the burial process, it needs a lot of maintenance. And so sometimes we get the privilege of coming in on the front end and guiding our congregants. But Mama, I said, Mama Lord, I told you it was going to come out. I told you it was going to come out, Miss Young. I apologize. It came out. But the truth is, Ms. Young, we come in on the back end and have to clean up what was not put in order. So both to you, Melanie, and to you, Miss Young. Thank you so much for your work. Pastor John, I ain't realized it, but I just took the show over the night. And
I'm glad, man. I'm so glad you did. My internet dropped.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
the host.
We
That's
saw
kind of
that you
wild.
were frozen.
But see, we here, bro. I'm glad. See, he took over the hosting. You know what I mean? So he gets a cut. We'll get paid tonight. So.
Okay.
Some of the things, Korey, that I have been doing besides just doing the seminars, I've been working with Congressman Danny Davis, who is the 7th Congressional District. He has been conducting and sponsoring town hall meetings where we've brought people in from different industries just to start talking about insurance. As you mentioned, Melanie, at the last minute, we're on a GoFundMe, or we're trying to figure out how to bury our loved ones. So we're talking to people from all industries. We've had the funeral industry come in and just talk about how you can, pre-plan for your own funeral. So we're doing that. And I've been talking to a number of hospitals here about starting to run some seminars in the hospitals. I'm also associated with Habilitative Systems, which is a human service organization in Chicago that's been in existence 43 years, and they see 8,000 clients a year. So I also have on my team a therapist, a woman that's been doing therapy for 34 years, social worker, licensed clinical social worker, CPA that can talk about assets and intangible or tangible generational wealth. How do you preserve your generational wealth? Which is, Melanie, you mentioned that's one of the issues that we have. We in our community lose our assets because we don't prepare legally for end of life.
It's the truth.
And that's one of the things I definitely wanted us to get through tonight. One of the things that Dr. Korey and I talk about is what our community doesn't know. And Darthula, see, I want to call Miss Young too, I felt weird saying it, You and I talked about this and in that faith-based community. One of the things that we see is folks, when we talk about end of life, people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about passing away. I remember years ago, I used to say, I'm going to live until Jesus come back. So I'm going to see the coming of the Lord. So, I don't want to get anything. And I grew up in the era where folks didn't talk about life insurance. And so, Melanie, you're here, you're an agent. So we'll get into some of that a little bit. But Dr. Korey, I want to come out and just speak to our faith-based community a little bit, some things that you've seen and things that we talked about that we hear in church that, and we said this prior to this conversation, when people hear hospice, especially at church, they think that's it. I'm confessing, I'm dying. I'm making a faith confession. I don't want to do that. I'm going to live and not die. So we talk about that. We've been hearing that and seeing that. And we mixed up in this scripturally, right?
Yeah, I think Melanie put it best. It's not the end of life. It's the future. It's an inevitable future. And if we continue to not look at it through the eyes of the stewardship of our life, we are going to be left in a heavenly coma, which most folks reside in. We just float on a cloud thinking that our faith is going to save us. I hate to say it like that, but your faith should be informing you, not saving you. Your faith should be giving you energy to plan for the future, not live in denial of what's inevitable. And I think that's the challenge of some faith communities, not all faith communities, some faith communities. Some people just don't talk about it. And some people don't talk about it because here's the truth that many clergy don't want to admit: we are ignorant about the topic. We've never done any work around the topic, and any healthy work around the topic. We lead with our experience as opposed to our intellect and the compassion of our heart. And we need responsible clergymen in this day. We need responsible leaders in this day that know how to respond to the needs of the people that they are serving, instead of being self-serving, because self-serving doesn't require scholarship and research and challenge and understanding of the culture. When you're self-serving, you're only thinking about yourself, but we need responsible clergy and competent clergy who are going to be invested in the lives of the people that we're serving, and their future is important, not just our now. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Let me
Yeah.
stop. I'll
That's
keep
not,
going.
that's
I,
good. That's good.
I
Go ahead, Melanie. Go
I
ahead.
can certainly relate to what you're saying, because in my own personal walk as a caregiver with my father, I can remember, it was a complex journey because myself, like many other people, like, you have family dynamics that play in existence there. And there was a time, although my parents were married for over 20 years, they divorced. And after they divorced, there was a period of estrangement between my father, my sister, um, and between my sister and I and my father.
Hmm.
So while we did have communication throughout the years, it was not that cohesive, kind of, we see each other all the time. We talk, we're involved deeply in each other's lives. I mean, my father certainly was there for the highlights of my adult life, but the day-to-day things, no. So when he came back into my life in a prominent way, he was sick
Hmm.
and needed care.
Hmm.
So in that journey, it was about, I kept saying, like, I approached it at some point, like, oh my, why me? Why us? Why does this keep happening over and over? And I remember this one particular, it was New Year's Eve. My father had been in a hospital multiple times. I was walking through a hospital in Baltimore, and I just said, Lord, why? Why is this happening to us? What am I supposed to learn from this? And the minute I changed my perspective from what am I supposed to learn, from why me to what am I supposed to learn, it's like a light bulb went off in my head, because suddenly it wasn't about me. It was bigger than me. It was like, you're going through this for a reason. You need to figure out why. God wouldn't keep putting I feel like these challenges, because he would get better and get sick and get better and get sick. And once I think I realized that it was bigger than us, and then started thinking and talking with my sister, we realized it's about, we don't ever want to see another family, if we can avoid it, go through what we're going through.
Mm-hmm.
We are educated people. I have a healthcare background. My sister has a science background. And yet, so she could manage the clinical part, talking to the doctors and understanding what was going on. I could manage all of the insurance, administrative stuff, all of that stuff. We were a dynamic duo, and we struggled. So we kept saying, if we're struggling, what about the patient who has no one, like you said, advocate?
Yeah.
There's no one advocating for them. Or people who just don't know. Like you said, we don't know. We're ignorant, and because we just don't know how things work. That's not, it's confusing. Healthcare in this country is very complex.
Oh my God.
And so, and then there are a lot of factors that play in it. There are socioeconomic factors that are in play. So every time my father went into the hospital and he spent multiple stays in medical rehab for months at a time, we were present. Like, you need to be present, and you need to be highly engaged. And then suddenly everything, it becomes about someone else and community. And I found through that, it was like you begin to see all the loopholes, the where the gaps fall, where we weren't educated, and where we weren't prepared. I was not prepared. My sister and I were not prepared. My father was not prepared. And as we realized that, you go along the way, then you start having those discussions, the community discussions we talk about. And my dad was always like, all right, that's for later. It'll be for tomorrow. My father was a very, he was a Christian, a believer, strong faith. Like, so he always believed it would get better. He would get better. I don't think he thought his life would end when it did, the way it did. And so he never really, we didn't talk about that. And he was also, he was very critically and chronically ill. So That's a lot. Like when you're at that point, when you're that sick, your focus is just trying to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
You're not thinking about how the bills are getting paid, what's going to happen after, because that's not your focus. Like you're just trying to fight for the next day. So your family comes in, and then there's that stress and that strain on the family. And I will say, because you touched upon grief, and how grief counseling, after my father died, I was angry. I was so angry because I had made this promise to him that I was going to make it right. Like we were going to bring him through. He was going to be okay. You're never going to be alone. We're going to have your back through this. And he wasn't. But my father died during quarantine, during COVID in 2020. So we weren't by his side physically because we couldn't go into the hospital. And I think about that all the time. I have a lot of guilt about that. Although, we were with him up until the end. The very last words I said to him before he died was, "I love you," because that was the last conversation we had on the phone before he was intubated. But all of those things, I didn't even realize the watershed of things that was going to come on the other side after he passed. Battling that, along with my grief, along with all that second guessing of myself, because we ultimately had to make the call to take my father to life support. So then those other decisions come into play. Am I making the right decision? Would my dad want this? Like there were a lot. In the end, I knew I made the right decision. And this is where it was really surprising because my sister and I are very close. We were very lockstep in tune. But at the end, she's younger. I'm 4 years older. But in the end, she was like, make the decision and I'm fine with whatever you do. And that was heavy for me because we'd always made decisions together. And a lot of times I deferred to her because her personality is much stronger than mine. But in the end, it was like, you're making this call. And it was like the weight of the world on my shoulders. But afterwards, through my own grief counseling, I realized, I know I made the right decision. I know we made the right decision. It was what my father would have wanted. But it would have
Melanie,
been.
I thought about something when you were just talking here.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've noticed with the way you're flowing, and Darthula, you may say the same thing here. When I was on the radio, I used to say this: sometimes your misery becomes your ministry. The thing that you walk through becomes the thing that you serve others in. And if I'm correct in what I'm saying, I know Melanie, I know for you and Darthula, I'm sure for you, you've walked through this, so this is why you have the experience. And Pastor Dr. Korey, you didn't walk through a lot, so
I think one of the things that happened for me, not just walking through it, but seeing so many African American women, we birth babies and we bury our dead. We're there when we're born, and we're there when our people die.
That's so true.
And I saw so many women would come to me and they would just say, "I don't know what to do. What should I do?" Because you really don't know. My mother stopped eating. I can't make her eat. My mother won't wake up. So those are the questions. And that's one reason why I decided to become a doula, so I would know. And the doula movement took off, Korey, during the pandemic because there were so many people that died in the hospital alone, and the medical profession could not keep up with what was going on. So doula movement, and in the Caucasian or the white community, there are more doulas than you can even imagine. There is very few Black or African American doulas.
Wow!
But there was I was at a retreat over the weekend at the United Church of God, United Trinity United Church of Christ here in Chicago with Pastor Moss. His wife had a retreat for the sisters in the church. There were 350 Black women there. And that was one of the things that we talked about to ourselves and what happens to African American women as we go through. But what I've also found, Melanie, it is the family. At some point, the person that you're working with that is coming to end of life, it becomes a lot easier. But the family goes through so much because the family generally is not prepared, because there's no discussion with the parent, the sibling, the loved one about what's going on with me. And the family has hope that this is they're looking for a miracle, especially in the faith-based community. Yep. They're praying for a miracle. And I tell people the miracle is that you are there at the end of life with your loved one. That opportunity to be with them and to, to walk with them on that journey. That's the miracle.
Can I ask you this, Darthula? For those who don't know, and I never assume people know what anything is. You'll be surprised how many people I find out, especially the younger generation. I just found out what a doula was within the last few months because I never heard that terminology. What is hospice? When we're talking about hospice, what's the purpose of hospice? Because when I did first hear about hospice and I was serving in my church, it was given so much of a negative connotation that, it was synonymous with death.
Right.
And as we were talking, you and Melanie and I were talking prior to us going live, people don't have a clue to what that is. Mm-hmm. So give us those who are listening who don't know what is hospice and what is their purpose, and then the responsibility, because you and I had talked in the past about there's a percentage of responsibility that people have with hospice.
Right. Hospice is really comfort care. And I think Melanie will agree. Once you come to, and the terms that the medical profession will use is that you have less than 6 months to live, you have a terminal illness. The doctors at some point will say there's nothing else that we can do. There's nothing else that we can do for you. But when you go into hospice care, your family really can decide and determine. First of all, I tell people to interview the hospice like they'll interview you. Make sure that they meet your requirements and your family needs, and understand that there is hospice at home, hospice in the hospital. You can have hospice anywhere. Mm-hmm. But I want people to understand, when you have hospice at home, 80% of the responsibility for the care of the loved one is the family. The nurse will come in 2 to 3 times a week, 30 minutes, take vitals, tell you where they are in the process of end of life, and basically it. Make sure that you have the medication, that the person is not experiencing any pain episodes, and just give you advice. When you're at home, it is overwhelming, and I try and prepare the family to understand that this is your responsibility, and how are you going to put your plan. I try and help them put a plan in order so they will know what they need to do 80% of the time.
And I think that is such a critical point to stress with people about the responsibility that it will put on the family. And that is something that you really need to talk to loved ones about, because people often say, I want to die at home, but they don't understand what that entails and what that means for family members, and the level of care required. And then the thing about when you do hospice at a facility, especially as it comes closer to the time that they know that the death is imminent, you can come at any time. You can be there all 24/7. You can be there, not rendering the care, but being there with your loved one and taking that walk and just being there, talking and being compassionate. And it makes a difference. But it certainly is a preference thing. And I think it is an ability thing as well too. But it's something I think people should talk about and don't. And
I agree. And hospice also understand that your Medicare, Medicaid, or your insurance will pay for it. If you're doing hospice at home, they will bring you all of the equipment that you need, the bed, oxygen, whatever is needed. And I see that Penny has a question. Yes, you can come in and out of hospice as you decide. The family has to take or be very much involved in those decisions. Once you go into palliative care, which is a step above hospice care, then you have a team in place. It can be an oncologist, your therapist, physical therapist, your physician, your pastor, your clergy, a doula. These people can be responsible for the type of care that you want. Once it's the decision that you want to go into hospice care, if you decide at some point, I want to go out of hospice care, you can. But understand, hospice care means that you are terminally ill, that they no longer are looking at curative care.
Have you seen Darthula, people who have gone into hospice and boy, I don't want to put it in culture, but I've seen folks go off in there. My mama, they ain't feed my mama. What's y'all mistreating her? What's going on? Y'all not giving her the medicine. They're not taking care of my mama.
Right. Well, one of the things that as you're going through the process, at some point, your body starts shutting down and your body no longer requires food or liquid. It becomes more of a hindrance than it does helping, because your organs aren't functioning anymore. So you don't process the food or the liquid, and it just becomes painful. And I felt like that when my mother-in-law got to her point where she was no longer eating and drinking, and the doctor said it would be more of a hindrance than it would be beneficial to her. I see somebody said Karen Crawford, hospital caseworkers can be more helpful. When I'm talking in a seminar, talking to people, I tell them that the caseworker becomes your best friend and the nurse practitioner. Mm-hmm. Because at some point, as you get ready to go into hospice, when my mother was going into hospice, the nurse practitioner called to have that discussion with me. And those are the people that you start communicating with, because once the doctor has determined that they can no longer cure you, because that's their objective, then they step back, and then the nurse practitioner or the caseworker takes over.
You know, Darthula, I have to appreciate. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Doula, I want to appreciate the language that you are giving us tonight around how we see end of life, right? Not that we are looking for miracle, but we are becoming miracle. And I think that's what Jesus taught us more than anything else about death and dying, is being present with the individual. Right. We get to, I know Easter just passed, but we really are celebrating being with Christ during his death and dying moments. Mm-hmm. And instead of running from that, we don't have language in the church we don't teach and have language around the gift that it gives us, mm-hmm. the time, right. the opportunity. That really is the miracle. And so from a clergy perspective, I think we have to do better work in explaining, especially in the faith community, at giving the people language. That's faith language that I can understand and wrap my mind around the gift that God gives me. There was nothing more precious in my life than spending the moments with my grandmother before she passed. Mm-hmm. Or being in the room with my friend and my brother just a few months ago, being able to sit with him before he passed. Nobody will be able to give me those moments again. And those were such gifts, but we are missing another part of the gift of God to us because we don't have language around it. So Darthula, thank you. I called her Darthula. Miss Young, thank you for the work that you do. I also want to add to this the back end of how clergy, not the back end, but the front end. And Melanie, I think you mentioned it earlier, the financial responsibility. Mm-hmm. Yes, that we can lean on Medicare and Medicaid, and yes, we can lean on our insurance company. But if we are really going to be good stewards, you need to plan for the kind of care that you really need.
And that's exactly where I was going next with that, sir, is because there's the stress of when folks aren't prepared and looking for documents, because your loved one may be in a place where, okay, we are still walking by faith and praying, and we know, we've seen this, people have come out of it, but while they're in that state, Melanie, we still got to pay bills. They still got
exactly.
They still got to have stuff. So Melanie, talk about that. What Jesus, because now you never know when something's going to happen. And we all think that, well, nothing's going to happen. I'll be fine. But then now something's happened, and Comcast got to get paid, car payment,
mortgage.
Growing up, I can remember, I know in my own household, I watched my mother manage all the finances. Both my parents worked, but my mother was the she sat down at the table, literally wrote the checks, paid the bills and everything. And I watched her do things, but she never talked about what she was doing. I could see her doing it. And you learn very early on, like, finances are private. People don't talk about their finances because they don't want you in their business. And because we often associate, and I say that because my former younger self was that way, associate our self-worth sometimes with our net worth. And so you don't necessarily want people to know where you are financially for various reasons. Well,
we're gonna find out.
But when you don't know, that then it becomes a bigger issue down the road. Like, you need to understand, like, you need to have some really hard, honest conversations. Like, my parents are both fiercely independent, but as my father became sicker, and he said, well, I want to live at home. I want to be by myself. And so then the conversation began, well, who's going to be here with you? Because these folks are telling us you can't leave this rehab that you absolutely hate and go home alone. But I have a mortgage, and so does my sister. So no one's quitting their job. So we need to find a solution. You need to have someone in the home with you. So we had a CNA come in. But then that brings up other issue too, because I don't want somebody in my home. Because again, I don't want you in my business. We've got to get past that cloak of secrecy, and because at the end of the day, when you're gone, we're gonna be in your business anyway. We're gonna know what you had and didn't have, and we're gonna be fussing because you didn't handle your business. And so and there's some trust factors there going on too. So I say to folks, you need to have your people, have your team, have the people that you trust. And people are like, well, somebody could take over well, you don't pick that person. You pick someone you trust. If you don't trust someone, you don't give them access to your financial information or your medical information. And it can be two different people, because you may have someone who is really great, like my sister and I, the great clinicians. She could do all the clinical. She didn't want to do the financial and the clinical because that was burdensome. So I took on the financial. It took me 2 years for my father to give me access to his bank account, to put me on the bank account, because he kept saying, you have my debit card. I said, well, what does that mean? I said, I can go to the ATM and take out some money. Your rent is more than what the daily maximum is. You can only get $500 from the machine. Your rent is $1,500. Yeah. You propose I go there 3 days in a row to get the rent, like there. And what it took was for my father being in the rehab, wanted to stay a couple of weeks. One of those times where it was almost the end, and he got better, but he came home to an eviction notice. Well, then that blew his mind, because he's an old school man, and he's like, his credit, his reputation. Then he was ready to talk about putting me on a bank account. Make a very long story short, my father never got a will. We can talk about that later. But when he died, because I was on the bank account and co-owner, the bank did not freeze the assets, and we were able to access that money, pay for his funeral before the insurance kicked in. I mean, you have to file a claim, and I wasn't going to sign benefits and get him 3% and all that jazz. But that was the saving grace. That allows us to still have access to his money and to be able to take care of things we needed to take care of right before and in the interim. But like that was a battle, a 2-year battle, because every time I had a what I thought was a logical explanation, it was the trust. You're not going to take my money. You're not going to take my independence, because that was the other thing. You're taking care of my things and paying my bills. But at the same time, I'm like, but you can't put all this on us and not give us the tools and not give us access to the information. So I don't want folks having to be like me, digging through folders when you go for visits, waiting for him to turn his back and go to sleep, and sliding papers into my purse that I took home and then copied on my printer. But I was glad I did, because at the end of the day, I had insurance policy numbers. I had numbers. I had the number to the pension office, so I could contact them when he died, like all those things, because he had no will. So I was really working on people's goodwill and tears. And because we were in the midst of the quarantine and you couldn't physically go anywhere, people were a little more lax with privacy. But in the end, it finally caught up with me, and they were like, you can't do anything else without the legal documents. So,
Miss Young, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How do you disarm people's suspicions in order to help guide them through the process? I think you could probably give a whole lot of people some skill set that they need, because your gifting is really about that, if I understand, Doula, to be able to disarm those suspicions in those critical moments to provide some care. So what are some strategies you could offer to us? I'm a pastor. Please help me too. It ain't just for me too.
I need to hear this too. Definitely need to hear this.
Yeah, I built in a module that talks about all of that. But I really try, and I have offered to sit one-on-one with people and talk to the parents to try and make them understand how critical this is and what happens if you don't have this in place. Because even doing the healthcare power of attorney, I advise people, like Melanie said, you have to have someone you trust. It does not have to be a family member, but someone that you trust that will stand up for you at the point where you become incapacitated and can no longer stand up for yourself. Yeah. I tell people your healthcare power of attorney will trump everything else that's going on. If your family members are saying hook him up, make him live forever, the person who has the power of attorney can say no. I have a legal document giving me the authority. I also do that with, the bank account. I talk to so many people, their mother will say, I don't want them on my bank account. I don't trust them. Well, I talk about then setting the bank account up so they become the beneficiary, or there are different ways that you can set it up. I run into a lot of people who have property, and there's only one person on the property. And there's an easy way to get around that. It's called the transfer of deed instrument, where you can fill out this legal document, witness it, notarize it, you file it in the recorder of deeds office, and when the person dies, you take the death certificate down to the clerk and you get on the deed. It's called the transfer of deed instrument. Very simple to fill out, and that protects the property. I also then spend a lot of time talking about when you go through probate, what probate means. Once you go through probate can take 2 years. And I have the person who was on my team as a CPA, Karen Crawford, who specializes and spends a lot of time talking about, for each state, there is a different process. But you think about 2 years, all your assets are tied up. You have to pay an attorney. The judge is the person that decides how your assets are going to be distributed. Right. And not only that, your creditors get the opportunity to stand in line before your beneficiaries. We also have an attorney that comes in and talks about trust. A lot of us are not familiar with trust. What a trust does is protects your property from creditors. Once you put your property in trust, you no longer own the property. The trust owns the property. Yeah. So when a person dies, and if their property and all their assets, you can put your life insurance policy in the trust, your cars, everything you own. And when that person dies, then based on how they stipulated they wanted them to be distributed, they will not be distributed. You won't get a creditor standing up there and saying, I want my piece of that pie. So explaining that, a lot of people then say, okay, I think you're right. And I have very few people who will not go along with, let's protect your money in the bank, let's protect your property, and let's protect any assets that you have from creditors.
Miss Young, that's why your work is so unique. I'm sorry, I jumped in front of you again.
No, good man. This is open conversation that we're having with this, and if people are watching this, and my hope and my goal, if you're just joining us, we're having a conversation about the conversation of death will not harm you, and I advertise it won't kill you, you won't die, you can still talk about it and live. So if you're just joining us, please make your comments. Please, we're sharing your comments, we're sharing your questions, so that we have these experts here that can answer these questions. Go ahead, Dr. Korey. You were saying?
No, I was just going to affirm all the things that Miss Young had first just said, and a few of the things I was just not aware of. And I know most families are not aware of those options, but when you present better understanding and different options for people, of course they're going to be disarmed.
I know you got scripture for it. Come on.
No. The scripture is
he gonna preach a Sunday, y'all.
The scripture is
disarming.
Oh, no. The scripture is called Darthula Young. Darthula, that's the scripture right there. Okay.
The book of Darthula Young, chapter 8, verse 6.
That is the language right there.
Mel, you can say something.
Go ahead, trust requires an attorney to set up a trust.
Yeah.
All the other legal documents, you can get an attorney or you can set it up yourself. Just like Melanie was talking about the last will and testament. There's a lot. I use this app called Rocket Lawyer, and I can do all the rest. But if you want to set up a trust, no matter where you are, it requires a lawyer, and it can cost $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, just depending on the lawyer.
I like to piggyback on that about like whatever you do something. Like there are so many options. You don't have to the trust, all of that. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because there are so many options on what you can do, because people are concerned about taxes, inheritance tax, things like that, creating burdens, financial burdens for their family through their assets and estates, and then ultimately potentially losing properties and things. Like I tell clients all the time, you need to consult a financial planner or an accountant or an estate planning attorney, because they are the ones who know the intricacies of the law. There are documents, and you are very correct, Ms. Young, there are documents that you can do on your own if you are savvy and you understand. But if you don't, certainly seek out the advice of licensed professionals.
Right. I agree.
In my case, I tell people all the time, my father died and he didn't have anything in place. I needed a document that cost $75 to file at the courthouse, but there were so many things I didn't know how to put the numbers in to value things to get the document. I had to use an attorney. That $75 document, that one piece of paper, cost me $5,000 when I was finished with the attorney. It wouldn't have cost my father $5,000 to get a will, because he didn't have a complicated estate, but I had to use an attorney. And no, this is not any way anything negative against the attorney. You pay for your expertise. I want to be paid for my expertise. I imagine he wants to be paid for his. He wanted to be paid for his too. And he was very flexible. He said, I can do as much as you can do as much. I can do as much as you don't want. I can use my paralegal. She's half the rate that I am. But it costs money. And had we done a little preparation ahead of time, that would have been $5,000 that we did not have to spend, that I didn't have to spend. And the whole thing about talking and family planning, my father's mother died a month after my father did. We had to go back to the attorney and redo the estate of my father, because unbeknownst to us, my grandmother had created a life estate, because she created a life estate and left it to my father and his two siblings. We didn't find out about that until she died. And because she and my father died close together, then it opened up this whole Pandora's box, because my cousins were trying to sell the house, and that's when we found out all these other things. And so had we been having these discussions, my father never mentioned that my grandmother had done this, because he probably didn't know and wouldn't have found out. So that then impacted my ability to do some things on his behalf. It meant the estate had to be reprocessed. There had to be some more work on the attorney's part.
And here's what I'm hearing. Just in one little swoop, couple of generations were affected by people not even talking about.
By not talking. Because we're secret. We're quiet. We don't want to talk about it.
And one of the things we want to talk about end of life.
And we don't want to talk about end of life.
Because we need to talk about there's the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spirit.
Yes.
Right.
Even what people want once they've left this earth. You know, once they've left, what do you really want? And that's a big piece of the conversation. Funerals today cost between $10,000 and $12,000. Folks, and I'm just saying that's the minimum cost. That's the low end.
Let me tell you what I told my wife, and this is just recently. I said, listen, I'm a laughing person. I've gone through my life through several homegoing services, funerals, whatever you call it. Everybody's at a church. The thing I remember the most is the repast. I don't remember when nobody preached. I don't remember people reading them cards. I remember we ate that fried chicken was so good.
Was that chicken good?
Yeah, and who made the potato salad and the so fell. Man, we did them pictures. So I said to my family, don't put me. One, I know I'm probably gonna outlive them. I've been joking with my wife about that. So I told her, my story was like, yeah, when I passed, they're gonna say, and when his wife Karen left, he trampled on. She said, oh, so I'm going first. But here's what I did tell her. I don't want to be in no church with a homegoing service. I know some of the preachers and Pastor Korey, I may be wrong for saying it, but the goal is to get somebody saved. Most of the folks I know is saved. So here's my thing. Don't preach no salvation message. I like people laughing. So have a cookout. Everybody come. You can share a few things. Everybody eat. Give. I got enough messages preached. You can take it as a favor. Give them a USB with my word on it. Just have a good time. If it's in the winter, have a cabaret. Get a DJ. Have fun and laugh. Yeah. And I don't, so yeah, Ms. Young, we could say that. Take that money and give it to somebody. Do something good with it. I want to slide into something because Melanie, you created something. I want to get in for just our time here because I don't want to keep people too long because I've got you experts here and you all have great things that you offer, and I want people to hear the things that you have going on because there are people out here listening, whether you're watching a replay or what have you. If you haven't shared this out, please share this out on your pages for me, please. Melanie, you've got something that you created, which I think is wonderful to help people just in their pre-planning. There's something that it makes it so simple.
Yes, it is my, I call it the healthcare planning toolkit. And it's really more than healthcare. It's a spiral bound workbook that I created where you can capture your important financial and medical information in one space, so that in the event that someone needed to come in and take care of you, they can go right to that book and have all your information. It came from my own dad because my father was a kidney patient, and he had we called it a white folder that went with him to all of his appointments, so much so his doctors were like, you didn't bring the white binder, because it had everything and we would show it to the doctors, or his aide would show it to the doctors. But this kind of came from the white book in that it's spiral bound. You can fill it out. I think I have one right here. You can fill it out with all of your information. I don't know, you can't really see it, but it's not really clear. But I have categories. You can put in your banking information, your insurance information, your health information, anything, passwords, all those things, because my target audience initially was seniors. And, a lot of people still like to write stuff down. They have in a bunch of pieces of paper. Put all your pieces of paper information in this one book. It's small enough. It can go in your desk drawer and be locked up. It can go in your tabletop safe, your file cabinet and be locked up. You could even put it in your safe deposit box because you can bend it and put it in. Or you can put it in your bag and take it with you, or someone else could take it and have all that information. You could literally keep all of the stuff that you're not a good historian about here. And then you're not running around like I was, digging through paper boxes and bags trying to find important documents that I needed at the time before my father passed and after he passed. So that's where the workbook came from. And then it allows you to just have something tangible and something portable. That was my thing. It needed to be portable. It needed to be easy to use. It needed to be tangible. And it comes with some instructions and reminders of important points and why we should collect the information that we're collecting.
Okay, and I'll share a little bit of information towards the end where people can get in touch with you and get a hold of that. Darthula, now you have wonderful things. You're traveling around, you're doing these workshops, you training these churches, and you training everybody on. Let's talk about that, because you got some things that I think it's very important, especially for these faith-based communities, especially churches that don't know what to do, and they can set up ministries. Correct?
Well, I think most of the churches have grief ministries that are set up. And when we go into a church, we generally work through the grief ministry. But there are a number. How I first really got involved in the churches, there was a PBS special, and there's a Dr. Maisha Robinson who participated in the special. And it was based on why do African Americans don't prepare for end of life in the faith-based communities. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because on the West Coast, they really didn't do much, but on the East Coast, there was a pastor and his wife who lost two sons. One did not go through hospice and the other did. So they became advocates for hospice because they saw the difference in the different suffering that the first son had, and the second son had a very peaceful death. But I contacted Dr. Maisha Robinson. She wrote a paper about this too. She grew up as a pastor's daughter. One of the things that she was very adamant about, and she thought this was the solution, is to really go into the churches and start talking to the faith-based communities about why we need to prepare for end of life, and to just get the message out that God is the only one that can decide when you come to end of life. But also, I think, Reverend, in the Bible, it talks about Jesus also prepares for end of life and prepared his disciples and everybody else for end of life. And that that is something that we need to do, that we need to start talking about. And conversations that I'm having with pastors and their parishioners is that they definitely have come to the point where they understand that this is something that we do need to take a look at. Mm-hmm. I want to add one other thing that we talk about and think about seniors. When you become 18, you are considered an adult. Mm-hmm. And some of these documents that you have to have in place, if you become sick, get in a car accident, you're 19, 20 years old, the first thing the doctors are going to ask you is who has their power of attorney, who has their
That's so true.
And then they go through the family and they'll start talking about the mother, the sister, the wife, and everybody else. Mm-hmm. But our message is not just for senior citizens. We talk about, yes, your parents, your siblings, your, everybody in the family. But an 18-year-old needs to start thinking about putting their own affairs in order. If they become sick, who has their financial power of attorney and can make decisions for them. One other thing, a friend of mine, she did not have HIPAA, and I think everybody's familiar with HIPAA, which is federal law. Her husband died, and she went to the doctors to get his medical records. They would not give them to her because they said her husband had not signed a HIPAA document.
Oh, that can happen.
Yes.
That's the most basic. That's the most basic thing you can do. Mm-hmm. And I think people don't even realize what they're doing when they're signing things sometimes. When you go to a doctor's visit, whether you're a new patient or you're coming at the end of the year, they give you all those papers to sign. Yeah. One of them is the HIPAA release. It asks you to name the person that you get permission for them to talk about your health care with. And you have to give their name and their, phone number or whatever. But you have to do that because just because my kids are both 18 and over, but they still obviously are dependent on me and my husband. But just because they are doesn't mean that we have a right to have access to their health information,
right.
Unless they give it to us and it is on record. The doctor won't even call your house and leave a message. Like we all live together. They will not leave a message on the phone for them unless they have said it's okay because they know other people could potentially hear it.
Well, that part, I knew. I figured, I guess when you died, they would give the information up to the spouse. But if they, I guess that's true. If you didn't sign their name on that, why would they get it? Because we know folks that have been married and left their spouse and in common law living with somebody else for 25 years.
Right.
So that happens. That's real.
That's a whole nother show.
So well, I'm gonna give that information to the lady I left 25 years ago. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's important. That's why we try and stress, and Melanie knows this as well as I do, especially going through what she went through with her father, how important it is. One of the other things, and I'm going to mention this one last thing, squatters. When I Google my name after my mother passed, what I generally tell people is that there are certain things that you do when somebody dies. And one of them is protect the property. I always thought, you lock up the property so you don't have family coming over, sneaking out. But I had a squatter move into my mother's apartment. Wow. It took 1 year for me to get that person out because squatters are not a criminal act. It is a civil act. It must have cost probably, in terms of damage and everything, $40,000 in order to get that person out. And if you look across the board now in the city and in the country, squatters are a big thing since the pandemic. Yeah. But that is something that I also stress to people. You have to protect your property once someone dies, because people will break in and move in, and it's not a criminal act, it's a civil. You have to go through the legal process to get them out.
I see, this is why we have this conversation. But see, that kind of stuff, you wouldn't even think about it. And somebody being single, you wouldn't even, and somebody could take advantage of somebody's place. It could be your dad, and he's in another state, and they moved in. Now you got to go through all this money to get them out of there. Wow. Dr. Grice. All right, so you've got this practice, and you've got several therapists that are available and accessible to help in these areas. Let's talk about that just a little bit, and I want to do just to close out, because we're getting over our hour time. I want to be able to have you all tell us how we can get in contact with you.
Yeah, I think that one of the gifts that we have at the Life Turn Network is we are a model. And there are very few congregations who have taken mental health seriously beyond the ministry, right? Ministries are going to help some short-term and triage moments. But I think Christ was into long-term transformation. And I think in this day and time, we need to go beyond the borders of just an official ministry, but I think congregations need a mental health arm that is providing care for their congregants, particularly in African American community. And I just can't say African American community. People trust their church. And they trust their leadership, despite all of the criticisms that the church gets. We do present a level of safety when it comes to specifically grief care. And people are in our pews grieving. They're in our Bible studies and all the things that we host, our shows and things we do, conferences. They're grieving. And a lot of their pain is grief. And over the pulpit on Sunday morning is not going to solve the problem. We need to be able to have a resource to be able to support our congregants, but also a resource to support the community that is around us. Why not us? Why not provide a safe space for people to go? And some of you may know this, but during the pandemic, the divorce rates quadrupled, right? Like you, Miss Young, my practice boomed during the pandemic because people had to sit with themselves and realize I got some crazy in me, right? or I'm having I can't believe I'm still wrestling with these issues. And grief is a major, it's a major issue. Like all of us lost during the pandemic, lost something, someone, time. We all lost, and so I'm encouraging congregations to reach out to the Life Turn Network. We offer consulting around helping congregations build that arm, not just a few deacons and a few elders talking about their discipleship journey. And I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that's temporary triage. We do need some practical care that the congregation needs to offer, especially because we deal with those things. We marry, we bury, we christen. Those are the things that we do. And why not have clinical care with a faith-based arm that can help support? We are, and I say this to clergy, and I say this to congregations, we are outsourcing resources that really could be coming into us, helping us further the mission that we want to do. Why continue to give that kind of care to people who don't have the kingdom and the faith or the heart of our congregants in care? The pharmaceutical companies and some of the other officers are raping our people, giving them terrible care and charging them astronomical numbers. Why can't we do it right and help our congregants at the same time? That's just my mindset. And so the Life Turn Network, www.lifeturnnetwork.com. That is a lot of the things that we do. We are a therapeutic center. We have a congregation, and we have some books and workshops and all the stuff that we offer to individuals on a regular basis.
Okay, so I've got it on the screen, and if you guys want to go ahead and scan it, I see a couple people are scanning Life Turn already.
Yeah.
Go ahead and scan it. That's the information there. You get with Dr. Korey Grice and his team of therapists.
Mm-hmm.
And
if you are in the Pennsylvania or Delaware, Jersey area, we do accept 12 major insurances, and we do offer some pastoral care for out-of-pocket fees. I'm just throwing that plug.
Plug it. That's why we're here. Melanie, how to get in touch with you and what you got going on. I got right here on the screen. Someone did ask about the book. You can scan that QR code. Go ahead, Melanie. Tell us how they can get in touch with you.
You can reach me. You can get in touch with me through, I have a website, mbmhealthcarellc.com. And you can also email at info@mbmhealthcarellc.com.
All right. And you can also get that. They can get that book there too, Melanie, or they got to contact you and you'll.
If you email through if you send the email, you can email through the website or directly, and then you can obtain the book that way. Mm-hmm. The workbook that way. Yeah.
Dr. Young. Rooted in Dignity. Talk to us.
There we go. Love that.
Yes, website rootedindignity.com, and you can reach me d.young@rootedindignity.com. I think d.young@rootedindignity.com. Just you can go on the webpage, send me something, and I'll get back to you. Be more than happy to talk to people. If you got any issues or concerns, need some help, just give me a holler.
All right, you all, thank you so very much for being with me today. And I thank all of you all who are watching this and you've watched this. You stayed the whole hour. I am so grateful for you guys. Listen, this is Vision for Change. If you've been with me for a while, you know what I do. I put out some content and some things that will help you in your ministry. We do coaching. We do all kind of different things we've got to help. And I do these platforms because I think we want to get the information out. We've got excellence. We've got great people right in our communities that are doing some extraordinary things and changing life. And sometimes they don't get the media. We get the drama on the media. We get all the crazy stuff in the media. And I want to provide people that can give you some change. And so if you want more information about what we have and what we're doing and when we're going to do some other things, man, just hit that QR code. Get on our emailing list, and we'll make sure that you're well informed on some of the new things that are coming up and the things that we're trying to do. And I've got the church going on Sunday, the Church Without Walls. Yes, you'd be surprised how many people don't want to go into the 4 walls, and I'm running around the hospitals and marrying folks and doing all kinds of things. But I love it. I feel so free doing it, And I'm not going to end this. I want to end this with I'm gonna go do a little quick round table, and I'm gonna start with you, Ms. Young. If you had to, this is my wheelhouse is to make sure people are inspired with their dreams and to step out and do things by faith. If you had to give them some kind of advice based on what would you tell them right now?
I think you just step out on faith. And one thing that prevents us from moving forward and realizing our dream is fear. Fear that we're going to fail. It took me a long time to just accept the fact that this was my ministry. And one of my friends told me, she said, it's about time that you stepped out and done this because it's been your ministry for years. And embrace those small things, those small accomplishments. And what I have had, I've got a lot of faith that things are going to work out. And things have just fallen into place. When I talk to people, I said, I'm just amazed how so many things have fallen into place as we've started Rooted in Dignity. So that's what I would say. You just have to step out on faith.
Melanie, what would you give me? What would you tell everybody?
And I'm borrowing this from a friend because I really do believe this, that your pain can become your passion. Like, quite often the really bad things that happen to us down the road become something good and something greater and better. And so embrace when you're going through, sometimes when you're going through trials, instead of fighting it, embrace it, because you never know what's going to be on the other side that's even better. That's even better for you, and that's even better for other people. Because a business came out of my frustration and the pain and the journey of the walk I took with my father. And I think about that makes me feel good to know that what we all we went through and what he went through wasn't for nothing.
Love it. Dr. Grice, you get to close it out. Talk to us.
I mean, they were great. Like, I don't know. I think my biggest challenge for anybody is to kind of live out of the core of who they are. Our values are what help us show up in every space that we're in. And we have to trust that the core of who we are, what we believe, what we value will guide us in our relationships, guide us in our career path, guide us in how we manage our money. And that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to live based on the things that I value. And the more I'm leaning into the things that I value, it is charting a path for the things that are healthy for me and helping me make decisions about things that are just no longer are useful at this point in my life. And as I've continued to lean into my core and things that I value, my mental health is in a better space. And so the trials are going to come, the challenges are going to come. But if you lean more into your values, I think you'll be better prepared for all of the challenges that are inevitable in our lives.
I love it. I love it. Thank you guys so very much for loving me and loving our folks that are watching. Listen, folks, you can watch the replays of this. We got it on the YouTube channel. I'm going to throw it up on the Vision for Change podcast, and make sure that you get in touch with these experts. Don't delay. That's one of the things that was big today. People wait. Don't wait. Please get this information. Contact them. Make sure you're bring them in to speak. Bring them in to help your congregation in your circle, in your tribe. So I thank you all again. And listen, I'm telling everybody here, listen, all things are possible if you can just believe. So walk by faith and not by sight. We love you guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.